The evening of February 23, 2019, began like so many others across Columbus, Ohio. Easton Town Center, an expanse of upscale shops, neon-lit bars, and endless weekend energy, was alive with the hum of nightlife. Couples spilled from restaurants, groups of friends lingered in doorways, and music throbbed from behind glass storefronts. It was the kind of place designed to make people forget the quiet worries of daily life, a place where celebration seemed stitched into the very pavement. Among the crowd that night was 29-year-old Tyler Davis. To most, he was an ordinary young man from Wilmington, Ohio. But to those who knew him, he was far more. A devoted husband, a proud father of a little boy, a man whose life revolved around family. His wife, Brittany, had planned the evening as a birthday celebration. The couple had been together for years, navigating the ordinary struggles of work, parenthood, and responsibility. This night, however, was meant to be different. A brief escape, a rare chance to relax and enjoy each other's company. They weren't alone. A friend named Sean had joined them, adding to the mood of lightheartedness. Together, the three checked into the Hilton Hotel at Easton, a gleaming modern structure tucked into the heart of the shopping district. To them, it was the perfect base. A short walk from the entertainment that Easton promised, and a safe place to return when the night grew late. The hours that followed unfolded predictably. Drinks were shared, conversations spilled into laughter, and the night stretched thin under the glare of city lights. By all accounts, Tyler appeared relaxed, though fatigue clung to him. He was not a man known for wild excess, nor was he someone who typically lost control. He was, as his family would later recall, grounded and steady. Yet as the city's energy surged around them, subtle shadows threaded themselves into the night, small details that would only seem ominous in hindsight. A few drinks too many, a faint air of exhaustion, and the disorienting chaos of Easton's sprawling layout. Nothing seemed dangerous at the time. To Brittany, it was simply a birthday worth remembering. But what none of them could know was that this celebration would soon fracture into something far darker. The lights of Easton that shimmered so invitingly would, within hours, become the last landmarks Tyler Davis was ever known to describe. As the night wound down, the trio called for an Uber to take them back to the Hilton. It was close to 3 a.m. when the car pulled up, the air still thick with the muffled echo of laughter and music from Easton's streets. Tyler slid into the back seat, exhaustion finally overtaking him. He drifted into a light sleep as the city blurred by, trusting that when he opened his eyes again, he would be at the safety of their hotel. But when the car stopped, something was different. Tyler woke groggy and unsettled, his body stiff from sleep. Instead of recognition, confusion crossed his face. To Brittany's surprise, Tyler looked around with suspicion, as though the surroundings didn't belong to him at all. The Hilton stood before them, its glass windows reflecting the glow of street lamps, but Tyler's instincts insisted otherwise. He shook his head, his voice uncertain. "This isn't right," he muttered. To Brittany, the words seemed strange, out of place, almost disconnected. She tried to reassure him, reminding him that they were exactly where they needed to be, but the unease in his expression didn't lift. Tyler stepped away from the car, his movements restless, as if compelled by something unseen. He refused to return inside the hotel, insisting instead that he needed fresh air. The tension of the moment was subtle but undeniable, a shift from the light-hearted hours before into something more fragile, more unpredictable. Minutes passed, and Tyler's agitation grew. He pulled out his phone, his voice low and distant as he told Brittany he would walk for a bit but would come right back. She watched as he moved into the night, his figure retreating down the street and slipping beyond the reach of the hotel's cameras. It was a decision that seemed harmless in the moment, but it was the beginning of a disappearance that would leave investigators, family, and strangers baffled for years to come. Tyler Davis stepped into the shadows of Easton Town Center, and from that moment forward, nothing was ever the same. The streets of Easton in the early morning hours were a study in contradiction. By day, they thrived with families and shoppers. By night, they glittered with bars, music, and movement. But now, with the clock crawling past 3 in the morning, the glow of neon reflected on near-empty sidewalks. The sound of laughter had long since faded. What remained was the eerie quiet of a place caught between revelry and abandonment. It was into the silence that Tyler walked. Security cameras showed him leaving the Hilton property, his figure small against the looming hotel exterior. He didn't run, didn't stumble, he simply walked, as if driven by a purpose that only he understood. Yet to those who would later study the footage, his movements seemed detached, almost mechanical, like a man both present and lost at the same time. At 3:30 a.m., Brittany's phone rang. Tyler's voice came through faint but urgent. He told her he was nearby, that he could see the lights of Easton shining in the distance. But the words carried a strange quality, as though he wasn't describing a familiar landmark, but something distant, something out of reach. His tone was restless, disoriented, the voice of a man trying to convince both himself and his wife that he was close to safety. Brittany begged him to retrace his steps, to simply return the way he had come. But Tyler's sentences drifted, broken by hesitation. "I'll be right there," he repeated, as though the phrase alone could anchor him. 40 minutes later, another call. This time, his voice was tighter, the edge of strain unmistakable. He insisted again that he was close, that he'd be back at the hotel any moment. Then, almost as abruptly as it began, the call ended. Brittany dialed back again and again, but there was no answer. At 4:10 a.m., his phone transmitted its last known signal. The ping placed him near Abbott Laboratories, roughly a mile and a half from the Hilton, an area defined not by bright shopfronts and clean sidewalks, but by wetlands, industrial fencing, and patches of dense brush. In winter's cold, it was an unforgiving landscape, dark, silent, and easy to get lost in. And then silence. No more calls, no more movement. For Brittany, the night dissolved into dread as she realized her husband had stepped into the shadows of Easton and, in that moment, slipped from the world. Morning arrived cold and gray, the light diffused through winter clouds that hung heavy over Columbus. For Brittany Davis, it wasn't a sunrise. It was a cruel reminder that Tyler had not come back. She had barely slept, her nerves raw from dialing his number through the night. Each unanswered ring cut deeper, a sound that seemed to confirm her worst fears. With Sean at her side, Brittany began retracing the streets near the Hilton. The sidewalks were damp with morning frost, patches of ice catching the dull glow of street lamps. She called out Tyler's name, her voice echoing through parking garages and empty stretches of road, swallowed quickly by the cold air. To anyone passing by, it might have looked like a woman searching for her husband after a late-night argument. But Brittany knew this was different. Tyler hadn't stormed off, he had vanished. By mid-morning, Tyler's father arrived, his face etched with worry. Together they scoured the district, circling back again and again as if sheer repetition could make Tyler reappear. The layout of Easton seemed mocking in its design. Long stretches of identical streets, glass facades reflecting one another, creating a mirrored labyrinth that even in daylight felt disorienting. When law enforcement was finally called, Brittany hoped for immediate urgency. Instead, she was met with words that chilled her in a different way. Officers told her there were countless missing persons cases in Columbus, that many adults who disappeared returned within hours. One officer even asked if she was sure Tyler hadn't simply walked away. Brittany's response was sharp, unwavering. "Do you know how many husbands I have? One. And he is missing." Eventually, the search expanded. Police dogs were brought in, noses pressed to the cold ground, straining against leashes as handlers guided them through parking lots and wooded patches. Officers swept the edges of Easton's manicured landscape and moved outward toward the Abbott Laboratories complex, the area where Tyler's phone had given its final signal. It was a terrain far different from the glittering core of Easton, thick brush tangled with bare winter trees, waterlogged ditches, and stretches of wetlands that sank beneath a person's weight. Divers combed nearby ponds, their movements slow and methodical in the frigid water, while officers with flashlights peered into every culvert and drainage ditch. But each effort ended the same way, with nothing. No footprints in the mud, no torn clothing caught on branches, No wallet or phone discarded in the grass. It was as if Tyler had stepped off the map entirely. As the day bled into night, Brittany's exhaustion deepened. Around her, the world of Easton carried on untouched. Shoppers filled the sidewalks. Restaurants served new patrons. Laughter drifted from bars as if the night before had never ended. And yet, just beyond that polished surface, her husband was gone. The silence where Tyler should have been became unbearable. Every passing hour without a discovery felt like quicksand, pulling Brittany further into a truth she refused to accept. Tyler Davis had not simply wandered off. Something darker had taken hold the moment he walked away from the Hilton, and it was leaving behind nothing but emptiness. In the days that followed Tyler's disappearance, the search continued with intensity but yielded little more than shadows. The Franklin County Sheriff's Office brought in K-9 units and combed through the wooded patches around Easton, while volunteers distributed flyers bearing Tyler's smiling face. Helicopters scanned from above, their searchlights sweeping across frozen treetops like pale moons. Yet despite the sheer scale of effort, no definitive trace emerged. Detectives turned to the last pieces of digital evidence they had: Tyler's cell phone records. The pings traced his movements through Easton that night, but what they revealed only deepened the mystery. At around 4:10 a.m., the phone's signal placed him near a wooded area close to Easton Way and Sunbury Road. And then, abruptly, the trail ended. No further pings, no outgoing messages. It was as if the device itself had been swallowed whole by the night. For Brittany, these details offered no comfort, only torment. She remembered vividly his last phone call, his voice ragged with fatigue, his words disjointed. He had said he was walking through the woods and could see the lights of Easton. That should have meant he was close, within reach. Yet when she rushed to the locations the police suggested, there was nothing. No footsteps in the snow, no discarded clothing, no Tyler. Theories began to form, whispered at first but soon gained momentum. Some believed Tyler had simply wandered too far, lost his bearings, and succumbed to the cold of that February night. Temperatures had hovered near freezing, and hypothermia was a silent predator. But this theory carried its own holes. After extensive ground searches, there was no body, no clothing, not even a shoe to confirm such a fate. Others turned their gaze inward, toward the darker possibility of foul play. Easton, for all its commercial glitter, was not immune to crime. Could Tyler have stumbled into the wrong encounter, met someone with violent intentions, and been silenced before he could return to the Hilton? So who and why? The lack of evidence made this speculation even more sinister, suggesting a disappearance orchestrated with chilling efficiency. Then some clung to a stranger theory, that Tyler, overwhelmed by alcohol, disorientation, or personal conflict, had chosen to disappear. That somewhere, somehow, he had slipped out of his old life to start a new one. Yet this clashed violently with the portrait of a man who adored his wife and was thrilled about the birthday weekend. Tyler had made plans, had future goals, and had given no indication of wanting to vanish. What lingered most painfully was the image of Brittany standing alone in Easton's vast, empty parking lot at dawn, clutching her phone, replaying his last words. He was close, he said he was close. But in that single hour between proximity and disappearance, reality had bent into something unrecognizable. The Hilton, the lights of Easton, the trails and wooded patches, all of it became a labyrinth of unanswered questions. To this day, Tyler Davis's disappearance remains suspended in a void between possibility and fact. A young man, celebrating his birthday, vanished in plain sight of a commercial hub teeming with cameras, cars, and people. Yet somehow, there are no recordings, no witnesses, and no evidence to piece together the final steps he took. It is as if the shadows of Easton swallowed him whole, leaving behind a mystery that refuses to fade. The mystery of Tyler Davis does not end at the gates of Easton Town Center. It stretches beyond the parking lots and security cameras, beyond the unanswered calls and the flicker of streetlights. He lingers in the hearts of those who loved him, a wound that refuses to heal because it was never given the closure of truth. Brittany, his family, and his friends are left to chase fragments, rumors, theories, and memories, none of which provide the resolution they need. But the story is larger than one man. Tyler's disappearance mirrors countless others across the United States. Ordinary people, plucked from the fabric of everyday life, leaving behind only silence and questions. Shopping centers, highways, parks, and neighborhoods that appear safe under daylight can, in an instant, become landscapes of nightmare. In Tyler's case, the nightmare unfolded on what should have been one of the happiest nights of his life. Perhaps the most unsettling detail is the normalcy of it all. He was not traveling alone through a remote forest. He was not scaling mountains or venturing into dangerous terrain. Tyler vanished in the heart of a commercial district designed for leisure and safety. And if someone can vanish there, under the gaze of surveillance cameras and the rhythm of city life, what does that say about the fragility of our own sense of security? Every year, thousands of families across America face the same void that now defines Brittany's world. Some answers are found, bodies discovered, crimes revealed, but many more fade into obscurity, their stories buried under the weight of time. Tyler Davis's name remains on that list, a chilling reminder that even the most ordinary moments can fracture into mystery without warning. And so, Easton Town Center stands as a monument to that unanswered question. Cars come and go, shoppers laugh and spend, neon signs flash as they always have. But for those who know this story, the place carries a shadow, a lingering echo of the man who walked away and never returned. In the end, Tyler's disappearance is not just the story of one man lost, but of how fragile our existence can be. We walk through brightly lit streets believing we are safe, tethered to the people around us. Yet sometimes all it takes is one step into the darkness and we are gone.